I'm being blamed for one of the most significant thefts in my community, and you might find it hard to believe when I tell you who's behind it. It's my own brother. Now, my entire family is convinced that I'm the one who swiped the money. Some might say, I've brought this upon myself. Where did I think my actions were leading me when I ignored the advice of others? I was the one who chose a path that wasn't going to get me anywhere. The only justification I could offer my parents was that at least I was attending college. I knew I couldn't match up to my flawless brother, who was a doctor at their clinic. But here's the kicker. I flunked multiple times and had to retake several classes. I squandered the money my parents sent me on frivolous things because I fell in with the wrong crowd. At the 11th hour, I decided to clean up my act, focus on earning extra credit, and graduate on schedule. But there was a hitch in that plan. I didn't stick to it. After graduation, I fell back into partying, failed to secure a job, and couldn't pay off my college debt. Before I knew it, I was being evicted from my apartment a year after finishing college. At least I'd accomplished something I never thought would happen, even though I was saddled with student debt. But I had a strategy. Simply tell my parents that I needed money to pursue my honors, then use it to pay off the student debt. They outright denied giving me the funds, arguing that my course was pointless. So I turned to my brother for some financial aid. Danny has been working alongside my parents for a number of years. He's a decade older than me, and I used to think he was 10 times the person I was. My parents adored Danny. Everyone did. He was smart, kind, the complete opposite of me. I explained to him the predicament I was in, how I needed money to clear my college debt, as the debt collectors were on my tail. I was struggling to find and hold down a job. I knew I was in a bad place. Perhaps it was karma for screwing up my own life that had led me to hit rock bottom. But back to Danny. Danny was a highly skilled surgeon, owned a large house, had a wife, and a baby on the way. I wished I had heeded my parents' advice and pursued a career in medicine. Now, I was approaching my late 20s, and I had nothing to show for it. I shared my situation with Danny, and his only suggestion was that I should return home and confess everything to our parents. Absolutely not. They would be livid. I wasn't prepared for them to disown me. I knew they were already fed up with me not making anything of my life. I told him that was out of the question. Then he suggested that I should just come home, visit them, and then he would try to assist me. I inquired about the strings attached, and he responded that I would simply have to work for him. It seemed like a great arrangement. So, I stuffed all my belongings into a duffel bag and headed back home, spinning a web of lies. Danny was aware of the truth, but I concocted elaborate stories about my whereabouts and activities. In fact, he even assisted me, claiming it would make my story more credible when I started working for him. After a month, Danny informed me that he had the money ready for me. I didn't probe about the source of the funds or anything of that sort. The last thing on my mind was that my brother would exploit my desperate situation to frame me for theft. The amount he stole, pinning it on me, was 4 times the sum I needed to clear my debt. I assumed it was his own money that he had deposited into my account, and I was about to use it to pay off my debt. But, to my dismay, the payment was rejected. Upon investigation, I discovered that my account had been drained earlier. I contacted the bank to figure out what had happened, and it turned out that a significantly larger amount than what I had asked him for had been in my account. To make matters worse, it had been swiftly transferred to another untraceable account. How could this even happen? Well, in my naivety, I had handed over all my account details, copies of my documents, and so on. He managed to execute all this without leaving a trace, while I was still grappling with the bank's revelations. Suddenly, my mother stormed into my room unannounced and slapped me. The slap was so forceful that I saw stars. She then accused me of being a deceitful liar. That morning, my brother had revealed to them everything he had supposedly discovered about me. But here's the kicker. I was the one who had confided all that to him. He had set me up flawlessly, making it seem like I had pilfered the family's money. He had been meticulous in his setup, strategically leaving my college warning letters scattered around the house. I knew instantly it was him when my mother labeled me a thief and a fraudster. There was some truth to it, but I hadn't stolen their money. Had I known the source of that money, I would have urged my brother not to go ahead with it. What baffled me was his motive. He was thriving in his life. He didn't need all that money. He had a secure job, was highly esteemed in the community, and seemingly had an ideal marriage. I never harbored any resentment towards my brother or had any childhood squabbles with him. He was always the older, stronger one. He blazed the trail and I merely followed. I knew I could never match up to him, so I didn't even try. When my parents labeled me as the dim, feeble, and sluggish one, I accepted it. I caused mischief in school just to get their attention, but it was all in vain because, in their eyes and the eyes of our extended family, my brother could do no wrong. We come from a large family, and I've never felt valued by them. For years I sensed they were waiting for me to slip up. This was the perfect chance for them to finally weed out the black sheep of the family. But for once, I was innocent. I had already begun contemplating turning my life around. Being surrounded by my high-achieving family had inspired me to put my degree to use, curb my drinking, and establish a stable home. But now, they had all turned their backs on me. My mother hurled harsh words at me, words that still sting to this day. She expressed regret over giving birth to me. She wished she had died during childbirth, so she wouldn't have to witness the disappointment I had become. Then she hauled me into my father's office and spilled the beans about my supposed crime. My father gave me a 2-second glance and said, "I knew it was only a matter of time. You're no son of mine." Then he ordered me out of his sight. They left me in the office while they made phone calls, and all I could think was, I'm heading for jail. My brother arrived an hour later, and I pleaded with him to tell the truth, that I hadn't stolen the money. He claimed ignorance. He was a smooth operator, a master of deception. He acted as if he'd swallowed every lie I'd told them when I returned home, and my alleged crime was a shock to him. Then he offered to help Dad file a theft case against me. I fell to my knees, suddenly grasping the gravity of the situation. The prospect of being locked up was unimaginable. I knew I wouldn't survive. I was too weak. I would perish in there. I implored my mom not to let them send me to prison. My mom demanded to know where the money was, and I told them it was Danny who was the real culprit. He was the one who had drained the account, so I urged them to call the bank to confirm it. But when I made the call, they confirmed that the transaction was made by me, not Danny. He'd been cunning enough to erase his tracks, and everyone was buying his story. So, I reached out to the family members I was on good terms with, laid out the situation, and asked them to intervene with my dad. They expressed their belief that I'd turned over a new leaf, but stealing from my own family was a line they never thought I'd cross. They suggested that if I returned the money, they'd stand by me. I had no idea where the money was, but everyone seemed to have a theory. A family meeting was called, and I was discussed as if I wasn't even in the room. The consensus was that I'd fallen in with a bad crowd who'd influenced me to steal. Most family members were in favor of turning me in. They argued that I'd tarnished the family name. But then there was my grandmother. She didn't stand up for me. In fact, she looked at me with pure disdain. But she did say in no uncertain terms that while I had indeed betrayed the family, sending me to jail would only damage the family's reputation further. And that's how I ended up being banished from my parents' home. They bought me a one-way ticket out of the state and warned me that if I ever claimed to be part of their family, they'd have me thrown in jail. I was cast out, never to return or communicate with them again. I was left with zilch. I hit rock bottom with no cash, no buddies, and no employment. And my brother, the one I counted on to pull me out of the mess I was in, was the very person who used me as a fall guy to score some dough. I was furious at him and embarrassed about the mess I'd made of my life, and I couldn't see a way out. That was a year ago. I needed that harsh reality check to pull myself together. I'm proud to say that I've been clean for 8 months and have been gainfully employed for the past year. I work at a hardware store, the pay's all right, and I'm gradually paying off my debt. My life is pretty mundane. Wake up, go to work, come home, sleep, rinse, and repeat. But I take pride in the fact that I'm healthier now and have plenty of time to reflect on my past actions. I've realized that while I was indeed a wild child, what my brother did to me and how my family has always treated me was just not right. I'm supposed to let all this go, right? Move on with my life because they're far away. But something happened today at the hardware store where I work, a place frequented by people from all walks of life. I overheard a conversation that I wasn't supposed to. It was between two guys. I couldn't quite gauge their ages, but they were discussing a specific medication that's only available at a clinic run by someone named Danny. It could have been any Danny, but curiosity got the better of me, and I Googled the medication. Turns out, it's not FDA approved. If it's my brother, well, I feel sorry for him. I haven't sought out my brother in a long while, but I've been curious about what he's been doing with the money he swindled from the family and got away with. The answer? He owns his own clinic, which seems to be thriving. So, he's managed to escape scot-free, and I'm livid, absolutely livid that he threw me under the bus for money, and I guess I just needed someone else to be aware of this. What's my takeaway from all this? If you screw up your life, it's much easier for others to pin the blame on you. The next update didn't come for a whole 2 years. Yes, you heard it right, 2 long years. Let's dive right into it. It's incredible how destiny works. That time when I was semi-absorbed in the conversation between those two guys. These guys were indeed discussing my brother, who's currently in a heap of trouble. My sister-in-law reached out to me a couple of nights ago, requesting a meeting. I'm not sure how she tracked me down, but she was in a state of disarray, looking like she hadn't slept in days. My mind instantly raced to my brother, fearing something terrible had happened to him. She assured me that wasn't the case, but something bad was definitely brewing. She wanted to chat with me because she believed I was the only one who could help him. Given that I now knew where he sourced the funds to open his own clinic, there was no concrete evidence to support her claims. She explained that when he launched his clinic, he didn't exactly follow the straight and narrow. He began buying and selling non-FDA-approved medication to make a quick buck. I questioned why she was spilling all this to me. If he's hell-bent on landing himself in jail, who am I to intervene? But she insisted that she'd tried to persuade him to cease, but instead, he stopped coming home. He's constantly at the clinic with his sketchy clients, leaving her to care for their child alone. So she felt compelled to ask if perhaps I could convince him to stop. I mean, I have no sway over him. Of course, I can't make him stop. But she suggested that, given my position as a legal associate, I might be able to predict the consequences if she reported him. I'm not really supposed to be divulging all this, but I made it clear to her that I couldn't assist her. She was complicit in his scheme to throw me under the bus so they could live their dream life. So, there's no way I'm stepping in to help her now. She pleaded with me to rethink, arguing that if he ended up in jail and lost everything, there would be no one to provide for her and her son. I retorted, "What do you mean? We have a large family with enough resources to support you." She countered that they could potentially lose everything if the authorities discovered my brother's illicit drug trade. It's been a few days since our conversation, and I'm wrestling with whether it's worth saving them after all they've put me through, or if I should just let them face the consequences of their actions. Update. 2 months later, I was on the verge of sending an anonymous tip to the police with all the information she'd given me. Well, I still plan to, but it won't be anonymous. He needs to admit to the family that he set me up. I thought my ordeal was over, that I was doomed to live in perpetual exile, but it seems my fate hasn't been sealed just yet. My family has been pleading with me to return because everything is spiraling out of control. Why would they seek assistance from someone they deemed as lowly as me? Well, it's because I've managed to turn my life around in the 2 years since my last post. Plus, I'm the only one who, given what I know, wouldn't send him to jail. I guess the fact that I'm even writing this gives away the ending. Yes, I did send him to jail. But let me fill you in on all the juicy details of how I exacted my revenge and left them with nothing. Shortly after my sister-in-law's visit, I sought advice from my boss about the hypothetical situation and decided that I couldn't stay silent any longer. My brother is a deceitful, unfaithful, greedy individual who puts people at risk. Moreover, he's deeply entangled with some shady characters. I couldn't let this continue. Just as I was about to head home and report him to the police, I received a message from my mother urgently requesting me to come home. It was a matter of great importance. I was curious to hear what she had to say after discarding me like an unwanted pet. So, a few days later, I found myself at their doorstep. Both my parents looked like they'd aged a decade. When I inquired about the situation, they brushed it off, saying I must be tired from the long journey. They then ushered me into a room to rest. Being back in their house stirred up a whirlwind of emotions, and I should have declined their offer. but I was already on the brink of spilling the beans to the police. I was fearful of my brother and his dubious associates. I thought it would be better if he confessed, as it might lead to a lighter sentence. So, after freshening up, I summoned my parents to the living room and insisted they spill the beans immediately. They confessed that they were aware of Christie's visit and needed my assistance. I retorted that they must be aware of Danny's illicit activities by now. They admitted they were. He had come clean about everything, and by everything I mean the whole shebang. How he swindled their money years ago, framed me, and established his own clinic. He had lived a guilt-free life for years, reaping the benefits of his betrayal. Now, with danger looming, he suddenly felt remorse. My mom's eyes welled up with sorrow as she pleaded with me to consider forgiving him for his actions. She claimed the entire family felt awful about how I was treated and wanted to make amends. I pointed out the glaring inconsistency. When I was banished, the whole family was present. But now, when they were seeking forgiveness, it was just them. I yearned to gaze into the eyes of each family member and declare, "I told you so." The thrill of vindication was intoxicating. I could almost taste the sweet flavor of justice, but it all hinged on their next move. They agreed to my demand and convened a family gathering the following day. I peered into the eyes of every relative who had once expressed their disappointment in me. I challenged them, "Where were you when I pleaded for your trust? You've always branded me the outcast and never offered your support. All these years, not a single one of you checked in to see if I was doing all right, if I was even alive or had enough to eat. I admit I've made numerous mistakes in my life, but I've never resorted to theft, not from you or anyone else. Yet you chose to believe Danny." They had trusted Danny, who was now huddled in a corner, head bowed, unable to meet my gaze. In a soft voice, he admitted that the blame was his alone, not theirs. But they were on the brink of facing the consequences of his actions. I asked him how, and he explained that his startup capital was the stolen money. Moreover, he still had connections to the family business. Everyone was about to be scrutinized, and their assets were likely to be frozen for investigation. The police were closing in on him, and they had secured a search warrant for his clinic. Every piece of tech he owned, computers, phones, you name it, was about to be under the microscope. It was a wonder he was even sitting here right now. I was curious about how this all tied back to me. So he dropped to his knees and pleaded with me to vouch for him in court and consider temporarily taking over his portion of the business until the investigation blew over. I just stared at him, baffled, as he played his trump card, claiming he had always been envious of me. We both knew that was a far cry from the truth, and that he was just trying to ensure his wife and child weren't left high and dry. He admitted that he knew his wife had spilled the beans to me, and that this information could be used as evidence, but he wanted me to fib in court to reduce the likelihood of him facing the maximum penalty. He made a heartfelt plea, stating that his medical license was the only thing he had left, and losing it would leave him devoid of any purpose in life. His wife, who had brought their child along, was now in tears, begging for my forgiveness. My uncle, a priest, chimed in about the significance of forgiveness and its path to eternal life. Oh, so now we're discussing forgiveness when they're on the brink of losing everything. But where was this sentiment all those years ago? They didn't give me a chance to defend myself and prove my innocence before they cast me aside and erased me from their memories. And I'm certain they erased me from their memory because everything that once belonged to me in my parents' house has vanished. As my uncle continued his sermon, other family members started to chime in, pointing fingers and blaming each other for the mess they found themselves in. I'd had my fill of their half-hearted apologies and theatrical performance. I stood up and declared that they could carry on with their soap opera, but I was checking out. My father had the audacity to raise his voice, claiming that I owed them this. It was laughable hearing this from him, the same man who had belittled me for years. He had crushed every dream I'd ever had, ensuring I could never achieve them. I once dreamt of working with cars, but he made sure every mechanic I approached for an apprenticeship turned me away. But I wasn't going to be silenced anymore. I was no longer the weak boy they discarded. I matched his volume and told him to back off. I let them know that all they had ever done was put on a show of being superior and virtuous. People respected them, oblivious to the fact that they were hypocrites. They looked down on the less fortunate, went to great lengths to evade taxes, and never missed an opportunity to badmouth each other. I didn't feel a shred of guilt about bringing them down. I rose from my seat, didn't utter another syllable, and left them to their squabbling. Once I reached my motel, I had to power off my phone because they wouldn't stop bombarding me with messages. They were starting to look desperate, knowing that I held the power to dismantle everything they'd built. They'd always managed to avoid scrutiny, getting away with so much. But now, they were about to be under the microscope. I turned off my phone and checked out of the motel. I headed to an old friend's place and crashed there for the night. I wouldn't put it past them to try to silence me. I know it might sound like I'm painting my family as potential criminals, but trust me, they're just plain nuts. Well, I need to get some sleep now. But there's a lot more I need to share with you guys. Update. It turns out my decision to stay at my friend's place was a wise one. The next morning, I discovered that my motel room had been broken into. My laptop, which I'd left behind, was destroyed, and my clothes were in shambles. Rookies trying to silence me before I could talk to the cops. But the joke's on them. I'd already contacted the police right after my sister-in-law came begging me to persuade him to quit his shady dealings. I had plenty of time to weigh my options and reflect on what I overheard in the store years ago. His power was expanding each year, all thanks to the crime he pinned on me, and I wasn't about to let him get away with it. So even before my folks called me back home, I'd given my statement and all the evidence, including my bank statement from years ago when my family chose not to believe me. The police then equipped me with a wire to record his confession when I met my parents. My buddy, whose place I crashed at, was a detective who was just missing the final piece of the puzzle, and with that, he could finally arrest my brother. The whole operation was executed so smoothly. I'd been waiting for months for a chance to see him pay for his actions. My sister-in-law inadvertently handed me the perfect opportunity, and I seized it. This morning, Danny, along with my parents, were arrested in connection with selling illegal drugs and smuggling. I anticipate the facade will start to crumble in the next few days, and some of them will turn on him to save their own hides. Fast forward 6 months. It's been half a year since my brother was put behind bars. My family pleaded and threatened me to retract my statement, which was the most incriminating one. But even if I had, the evidence against him was too compelling. My sister-in-law felt stabbed in the back when she discovered I'd become a state witness and had the audacity to confront me at my workplace, where I promptly had her escorted out. Following that, I secured a restraining order against the entire clan of lunatics. As I foresaw, most family members turned on him in court. They recounted how he initially swindled the money, set me up, and established his own clinic. They even got employees who had witnessed his wrongdoings to testify. The case was clear-cut, and the evidence against him was too substantial, particularly since he refused to disclose his clients' identities. Given his reluctance to rat them out, they must be some seriously dangerous folks. His medical license was also under scrutiny due to these allegations, and, as expected, he lost it all. He was sentenced to a decade in prison, the maximum penalty for his crime, and the part that hit him hardest was the suspension of his medical license. All the assets he'd accumulated while running his illicit business were seized and became state property. The only unfortunate part was that my parents' clinic managed to escape unscathed. It's just a rumor, but I heard they tossed my brother under the bus to save their own skins. Now he knows what it's like when everyone turns their back on you, refusing to believe your side of the story. After all was said and done, it was only a matter of time before the family structure crumbled. Their reputation was shredded, and they started losing clients at an alarming rate. Who would want to visit their clinic now? On top of that, health inspectors began making regular visits to ensure everything was up to par. You can imagine how well that sat with the patients and staff. Their cherished empires started to crumble, brick by brick, day by day, and I reveled in it. I was chuckling all the way to the bank with the compensation I received for the emotional distress they caused me when they accused me of theft all those years ago. I only had a small chunk of my student debt left, and the rest was all mine. I paid it off and invested the remainder. I feel like my time for further education has passed. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, but if I come across a business opportunity that piques my interest, I might just dive in. For now, I'm content with my job as a paralegal. I really like the work I do here, even though it can be quite demanding at times. But the best part is, I'm doing it for myself, not for my so-called family. Update. Here's the final piece. Hey folks, just wanted to add this little tidbit here. I recently got news from my mom, who hasn't stopped trying to reach me since I permanently left town. I've had to privatize my social media accounts and change my phone number multiple times. She informed me that my father passed away a couple of weeks ago and has already been laid to rest. I've been ignoring her calls. She also mentioned that he left me in charge of the clinic. It must be some sort of cruel joke. Why on earth would I want to be involved with that clinic again? They only want me around now because my brother's in jail and of no use to them. He was their golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. Look where he ended up. I've grown tired of her constant pestering, so I've decided to file a harassment complaint against her. For years, they made me feel worthless, and I bought into it, never feeling motivated to achieve anything. Now, I'm considering opening my own restaurant. I'm determined to make it a hit, and folks will recognize my name, the name that I've personally selected. Just a few days back, I decided to change my last name. I want absolutely no association with them. She and the rest of those scavengers could lose it all and wind up homeless for all I care.